Hello and welcome to this conversation about harnessing isolation, brought to you by Beyond the Bindi. I've got four great people with me today. I've got Tejal. Do a little showbiz wave when I say your name. So Tejal is a dentist by profession, but she's also passionate about music and yoga and reading and running. We have Reena. So Reena is an English teacher turned trained yoga teacher, and she runs classes in her local area. We have Meera. Meera is a wife, a mum, a dentist. Meera is also living with cancer, but living with vitality. And just like myself, she's very passionate about chocolate. And finally, we have Chaitanya. So Chaitanya, by profession, is a psychotherapist and a hypnotherapist. And she also has keen interests in bhakti-yoga and Vedic philosophy, and we will find out a bit more about that later on. So we're just here to have a chat about how we can use the current isolation that we find ourselves in to be proactive, productive, and feel like we're contributing something to ourselves and to the people around us. And I'm going to start with asking Meera a question. So Meera, as I mentioned in the introduction, you are living with cancer, and as a result of that, you're already quite familiar with the concept of being in isolation. So I wondered if you could just share something with us about what you went through last year.
Yes, so my first experience of isolation was proper isolation, complete isolation in one room with no windows that you could look out of but not open, because I had a stem cell transplant last summer as part of my treatment plan. I was lucky that I was told about this a few months in advance, so I did have time to prepare, and I was warned about the length of isolation. I was told it would be anything from 4 to 6 weeks. And then semi-isolation once I got home afterwards. I was quite lucky. My complete isolation lasted 2.5 weeks, but then I did go into semi-isolation once I came back home. Then the kind of rules of isolation started to lift and became easier, and I was able to start going out again, and then this happened. So I am now back into strict isolation. I'm one of the vulnerable people in the country, but this time around my family are self-isolating with me to add to it. Thank you.
What advice would you give to all of us who find ourselves in this circumstance of isolation and social distancing for the first time in our lives?
This is really easy for me to say, and I'm sure it's not easy to do, but I would encourage you all to embrace it. The reason being is we can't change the situation, but there's only one way we can change it, is by flattening the curve and seeing the decline in cases. And that's not going to happen until we get through this period. So we could be angry about it, or we could embrace it, do some positive things in that time, whether it's to change things or to just be that, you don't have to learn something new. I actually don't have any time to learn anything new at the moment. But yeah, I think for me, being angry would not serve me well to be able to get through this time. Just to add though, for me, it's not a few weeks of isolation. I'm looking at months of self-isolation with my family. And really, I'm not going to be safe until there's either a vaccine or a treatment. So I actually don't know how long this period of isolation is going to last. It could be more than a year.
It really puts it into context, I think, for those of us who are starting to climb the walls after 3 weeks. And it really speaks to that sense of wanting to be positive about it rather than angry. You talked about embracing the isolation. Now, Tejal, I mentioned that you have a passion for music, and I believe you're a student of music. So is that one way that you're embracing this isolation? Are you spending more quality time with your sitar?
100%. Like, I agree with what Meera said. Like, you can't, this is just one of those situations where we can't control it, we can't change it. And I don't know about you guys, but I felt like before this period, everyone you spoke to was always kind of struggling for time and always on the go and just always on the run. And yeah, I just love this feeling of things being slightly slower and calmer and not constantly having to look at the clock. And yeah, so to answer your question, Viv, I've really been, music has probably been the biggest solace in this time, and to see it as a bit of a blessing. I'm really just able to just give my mind to it and just do it wholeheartedly. And I don't think I would have had this opportunity otherwise, or maybe I would have, but I really would have had to make that time. And yeah, I'm absolutely loving it. And obviously there are times where I do want to see people, I want to go out and do the things that we normally used to do before. But yeah, I feel like I've got another companion, you know.
There's actual joy on your face. It's really nice.
Her and everything.
So I also mentioned that you are passionate about yoga. I know that Reena is as well. I mean, Reena, you've turned your passion for yoga into a profession as well. A bit like Tejal with her music. Is that something that you're learning to embrace, or learning to embrace perhaps within your household as part of this isolation period?
I definitely say so, because very, very luckily the people that I live with in my house, I live with my husband, my brother-in-law, and mum and dad as well, and they're all quite into all of that. So I guess it's made it that little bit easier for me to sort of carry on with what I do. They're not necessarily from a shaka or samiti background, so sort of coming in, educating them a little bit sort of about that, getting them with, I'm not sure whether anyone knows about the e-shakas that are happening in the morning, but you know, typically it's quite hard when you're self-employed. That's probably the downside, but waking up in the morning and feeling like, right, I've got shaka to get to, that's definitely something that is like a positive. And it's hard because you don't really get that interaction personally, like maybe going to correct someone as you would in, say, teaching a class, but you still get to see them on the screen, if not anything else. And I'm just completely embracing it, because even though I can't, you know, as you know, schools and establishments like that, a lot of corporate places as well, they're all closed, and that's where I normally I'm going to for work. So having to shoot videos for YouTube outside in my garden, and dealing with like noisy neighbors and like some sort of hammers or drills or something, and then thinking, oh God, I've got to go back inside, then finding a place inside, because you want to try and do it so then you're not sort of disturbing anybody else. So you know, there are lots of pros and cons, but when you're doing it, it's just like you and yourself, and like the lady said, it's completely true. You know, we can't control what's happening outside, but we can control our response to it, if not anything else. And just having this time to read up and on sort of more on yoga, and sort of charting the asanas and their benefits, and trying to sort of reach yoga, trying to get yoga reach towards the children is something as well that it's tough, but you can fully embrace it when you're just there on the screen. And of course there's a lot of technology involved as well, so you know, Zoom videos and you know, well, if anything, I've learned how to use a GoPro because my phone wasn't working. So there's always ups and downs, but doing it and just being there, sometimes you forget that the screen is there. So
I think we're all learning to embrace technology in ways we probably haven't done before. I just want to ask Chaitanya about kind of your professional situation. So obviously you work as a psychotherapist, a hypnotherapist, a counsellor, and I would imagine that's quite, you know, that's again, like Reena, it's a very face-to-face interacting with people situation. So how has that been for you professionally moving into this isolated state? And have you been surprised by anything?
So yes, it's been, well, actually I should probably say that I manage a counselling service at a university. So I have staff who are therapists. So that's majority of my work, and I work privately. So I'm quite used to working online actually privately, because I have clients that are abroad in my private work. But in my job at the university, I've had to shift completely how we've been working, and different students have responded differently. Some have embraced working online, but some have some have really not wanted to engage in that way. And also because many people are self-isolating, they don't actually get a confidential space to talk. So that's become a bit of a hurdle. So we've been being really creative. Some people are sitting in their cars, and some people are just using Zoom chat, so we're trying to be creative to try and be as available and as supportive as possible with what's going on. But it's had its challenges, but we've settled in, and it's good. The profession that I'm in, at least we were able to do our work online. There are other professions that you can't, because like physiotherapists or massage therapy, for example. We're good that we've got this platform to use. Yeah.
And how about you personally? So that was obviously your like professional situation. But how are you personally using the isolation or dealing with the isolation?
Well, it's interesting because I was also kind of resonating actually with what Tejal and Reena were talking about, just about being able to absorb themselves in what they love and all of that. And I was actually thinking about being introverted. I'm a natural introvert by nature, and introverts are going to be able to feel really comfortable in their own space and being at home and like doing their own thing and reading books. And that's like me. You're asking me personally, how am I dealing with it? I'm fine. I'm fine being at home. I'm really, really thankful that haven't been personally affected by the devastation that COVID has been creating. But I know of people that are, obviously are being so personally affected. But me personally, I resonate with this kind of introverted way of life. I go for walks, once a day, just to like stretch and get some fresh air, staying away from everyone. But I enjoy that. But I imagine there are other types of people, like extroverted people, where they're just so, they just, their energy comes from being with others, and that is really difficult for other people. But for me, I've been absorbing myself in cooking and learning new things to cook and reading and connecting with people online and going for a walk. So
So now you have to tell us something new you've learned to cook. Like you can't just say I've been learning new things and not tell us.
Well, for me, I made apple pies the other day. Gluten-free base, because I'm gluten-free, and I'm refined sugar-free as well. I made like stuffed paratha the other day. So
so basically, when this is over, we're all coming to yours.
Yeah.
So this is mentioned by a few of you about the fact that we're not necessarily in this alone. Some of us are isolating on our own in our homes, but some of us are living with families. Meera, you talked about the fact that when you were isolating after your treatment last year, you were isolating, but your family weren't. They were able to come and go. Now you're all isolating together. How has that been different, and how have things changed for your family, and how have you managed those dynamics amongst yourselves now that you're all in isolation together?
Yeah, you're right there. So obviously last summer it was very easy for the rest of my family, whilst I had to stay at home and I couldn't go out or socialise, and we couldn't have anyone at home. visiting. My son didn't have any play dates, all school holidays, but they were still able to go out as long as they didn't surround themselves with people who were unwell. But this time round, the reason we all have to self-isolate is that I can't be put at any risk at all. And it's impossible for me to then live in one room in the house and them not self-isolated. We just realised it was easier for us to self-isolate together. So this time, my son and husband have had to get their head round not being able to carry on with their activities. Mainly, so work has been addressed because my husband can work from home. My son can school from home, although I seem to be doing the bulk of that work. And then once school starts again, the school's already put things into process for that. So schooling work has been covered. We've realised that we also need to exercise. We need to continue exercising. I realise we're really fortunate. We have a garden, so we can exercise in the garden. Just things that we've managed to put into place. My husband and son both do taekwondo, so we approached the taekwondo instructor if he could arrange lessons via Zoom. He's now put that into place for all his other students, which is great, which is why we had to start this chat a few minutes later, because they were both in Zoom lessons. Other ways of exercising, my husband likes to cycle, so he got himself a turbo trainer to attach his bike to it so that he could still cycle in the garden. But I realise now that exercise equipment's really difficult to get hold of. So we've been using YouTube app videos for yoga, things like that. We all do Joe Wicks PE together. So that's the exercise start. Food, we've been really lucky. We've had to rely on friends and family to do our food deliveries until we could get a delivery slot. Very grateful to everyone who's been able to do that for us. Neighbours have been great as well. The other things that we put into place, though, is we realised quite early on is that we need our own time as well, some me time. So we realised it was really important to respect each other's need for time alone, whether it's going to watch our own TV programmes, to go and sit in a room on our own to read and not be disturbed. Again, we're lucky that we can do that. My son can go, to his room if he wants to. I can, go to our room or go to the garden alone. So yeah, the three of us having to do this together, I guess first couple of weeks took a while to adjust. Sticking to routine was a challenge initially, so we gave in, and for the first week in lockdown, my husband obviously had to continue with a routine with working. I work part-time, so the rest of the time we decided to extend our time in our pajamas for a while. Again, embrace that time of not having to do the school run for a while. But now we realise that routine helps us, not a strict routine, but knowing what we've got planned for the day, whether it's a music lesson online or a sports lesson, or later we'll do some yoga, knowing what I'm cooking with the ingredients I've got at the moment, that helps as well. Just having a loose structure to the day. We found it helps us a lot.
I think that we've all got our challenges with putting routines in place, and Reena, you were saying that you've got an intergenerational household in a different way. So while Meera's got her son, you've got your husband's parents that you live with.
Yeah,
got kind of a multi-generational situation going on as well. How does that affect your ability to kind of just muddle along together to form a routine as a household when you're all in the same space at the same time?
I mean, it's not really that bad, to be honest. It's quite easy going in this house, because when I first moved in, because I'd completely relocated, I had to leave my school, which meant coming here and then looking for a job. So got to spend some quality time with mum, and she is the best cook. So picked up lots. Maybe we can have her come dine with me. But no, so I just sort of towards the start, we sort of spent a lot of time together. And my husband Ashish and my father-in-law, they own their own business, so they're always going together to work. But like with the yoga, everyone's kind of did it in their own way before I came, so I guess that made the transition a little bit easier. I sort of never had to do the, oh, come on guys, let's do it. So I think it was all quite self-imbibed, because mum's a housewife and she goes a good few times, and you're not talking about like well, you'd think you weren't talking about really difficult classes, because it's a pensioners class where you go and there's quite older people, but it's a solid 2-hour class and you can seriously ache, because I went with mum a few times and the body really feels it. And then there's this sort of notion that, oh, you know, she's an instructor, she'll be fine with it, but, you know, but with that comes almost a tiny added bit of pressure that, oh, you know, you've got to make sure you're doing everything properly, you don't lose your balance, etc. So never really sort of had to do that there. And the boys, they play cricket for our Samaj, so they've always been into their health and their fitness. When I first moved here, one of the first things I did, it was quite challenging getting into schools, but one of the first things I started to do was do my own evening classes. And my husband and my brother-in-law were my first few clients. And sort of come Thursday evening, we would all just leave the house together. So it was quite nice, because even before sort of like I'd come into the house, it was Ashish was going to yoga classes with somebody else before anyway, so it was just a matter of changing the day and sort of going with that. But never really sort of had to do that. I managed, actually, it was quite fun last Saturday. We had to move all the sofas aside because one of the girls from Woolwich, she nominated us for the Surya Namaskar challenge. So we had to do this as a family. So, you know, pushing the sofas aside while the jai was going on in the kitchen, and going for the solid Surya Namaskars and trying to make sure everything fits, and the camera lenses, and, you know, the joy of technology. So, yeah.
Just for anybody who hasn't heard about the Surya Namaskar challenge, do you just want to quickly just tell us what that is?
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's a Sangh Samiti initiative for the month of April, to aim for 10 Surya Namaskars daily, but doing them as a family. So, you know, 5 of us doing it together, which meant that I didn't have to say to my shaka that, look guys, I've done 10. I could say, we've done 50, that's us. And it's nice to hear that the shaka that I go to here, it's nice to hear that they were the highest in the North London region as well. So it's just about doing 10 Surya Namaskars a day and doing it as a family. And although we may not be able to do it as a family because everyone has different work schedules, me and mum are a little bit relaxed, but, you know, if we're making lunches or, you know, we need to like I need to like go a little bit later in the bathroom line or something like that, it would just mean that we can't all do it together. Whereas at the weekends, it's nice. So yeah, leaving with like, it's nice to not have to sort of really push. And it's kind of the other way around sometimes, because mum's really into, and she knows how Ayurvedic stuff as well. So, you know, if something's wrong, it will be like, oh, can you fix my neck? Or should we drink this? Let's put this in the barney and drink it, you know.
It sounds like you've built a real kind of sense of community just within your own household to try and help each other get through this sort of strange time that we find ourselves in. Yeah,
everyone's like super, just almost like a get on with it attitude, and like Meera said, like have your own time. Because you know, it's not necessarily the case. Like it's something silly, I know, but breakfast time on Saturday and Sunday mornings, you know, it will always be the Buddha show that we're watching, and then, you know, dinner times would, you know, it's almost a routine. Before I came in, there are times when we are, without even knowing, we're just kind of like making our way to that area because we know that's where we have to be. but then also like sort of having this time just like me on the screen, and being in the Vedic Vibhag, there's pretty much a call every day or something like that. So there's always that keeping everyone sort of going. Yeah, really great time.
Isn't it great though that we've got technology now as well? So, you know, even though we're in isolation, we can still speak to our friends and family and see them on a screen, as you know, as we're talking now. So
I definitely agree. Like them, I can only imagine what some of the as Chaitanya, as you were saying, like not having, you know, not being personally affected. I know people that are, but you know, at the moment, you know, Bhagwan's been very lucky, being very good to us, and we're very lucky to not have anything in the house yet. But you're right. I just almost feel so much for the people who are either in just a room or who are, you know, elderly and you know, I'm not great with technology, but just to not have that access and not be able to see another human can be I'd imagine quite challenging.
I definitely am super grateful for technology. I think that also it's slightly worrying how much screen time has gone up as well. And I think that alone time is not just alone time from physical people, but also from my phone, just to like either turn on airplane mode and I've been through, my parents were away and they got stuck actually in Abu Dhabi, just they were there through when lockdown got initiated, and so I had a month at home alone, and now for the last week or so I've had mum and dad in the house. But I think even in that month I got annoyed with my phone, and I love people and I love the fact that we can get in contact with each other and it's amazing. But there were times where I just had to put it on airplane mode, with all due respect to anyone involved in that, and muting WhatsApp groups and things like that, because we are reliant on it and we are dependent on it, and it's evident why sometimes just need some technology free time too.
Tejal, when you had that month kind of alone, in this sort of not enforced lockdown, but I guess you were kind of alone and now we're in this lockdown situation. Where do you get, like, do you have like anything that inspires you on a bad day, or like anybody that you kind of think, oh, like if that person can do it, I can do it? Or do you draw any motivation or inspiration from anybody in particular on the bad days, on the days where it all just feels like, oh, I just need to leave my phone, or I'm really fed up of this situation?
Definitely, I do. It comes back to music actually. I'm currently reading Pandit Ravi Shankar's biography, which recently got released last week actually, and he was a natural extrovert, and I think Chaitanya, you mentioned you're a natural introvert, and I can relate to that definitely. I love people and I love socializing and I love communicating, but actually some alone time to energize is always very welcomed. And actually Pandit Ravi Shankar, he was the opposite. He thrived off people and their energy, and he was so loved by people, and he loved the world, he loved traveling, he loved being out. But actually when he decided he wanted to take up the Siddhar seriously, and he found his guru and he went to live with him, he's living in a small village called Meher, and it was literally just a village, and he'd be up at 4 a.m. and go to sleep at 10, and actually all he'd do all day was study and learn the Siddhar. And for him, he found that really challenging. He did that for 6.5 years, and this is only a month that we're talking about at the moment. So I think my strength comes from that, because he, in that time, yes, it was difficult and it was hard, but that's where he grew the most, and that's why he learned the most, and that was the peak of his learning, and that's why he is the name that he is today. So yeah, I think I'd say that he is the inspiration. And if I'd like to take that from this time where I'm in isolation, where we're all in isolation, to take this, to use it to grow, to develop, to gain, and take it further, because it will never go back to normal, to what it used to be, but it will hopefully all calm down and we gradually phase out of this, but to take this and gain something from it into what comes next.
It's really, I think I'm a bit inspired now. Does anybody have like any inspiration like closer to home? Like, do you like draw from people around you or particular friends or family members or anyone when it comes to a challenging time like this, that you would think, oh, actually that person that I know manages this really well? Anybody?
Yeah, I can definitely think of two people there. One is my mum, who has been through all of my treatment with me over the last 9 years. And but just one example last year was when I had my transplant, and in the months afterwards, where I was still quite unwell, she pretty much moved in with us to look after us as a family, and help us as a family. And she sacrificed not seeing her other grandchildren for a few months in case she picked up a bug that would be passed on to me. And I just think, you know, she did that willingly last year just to get us through that challenging time. So in return, you know, I just think, well, we've got to get through this now because of what she's done over the years for her family. But the other one is also my 96-year-old gran, who is very cool. She joins our weekly Zoom family quiz every week. And the first week we all got together, 20 different households, and she had a little chat with us at the end, and she said, look, whatever's happening in the world, this virus, it's happening. Just make sure that you're all kind to each other, eat well, do your daily exercise, and it will pass, and we'll see each other again. And I thought that was just wonderful. But it's also, I guess, her experience of all those years. She's emigrated twice. So, you know, moved home, moved family, you know, twice. And in those days, there was no telephone. She traveled by ship. You know, her family probably had to wait weeks for the letter to arrive to say that she'd arrived safely. So they've, you know, the older generation have had periods of isolation in a different way when they moved home, for whether it was marriage or migration, things like that. So I think there's a lot of inspiration we can take from people within our friends and family circle.
I think there's a lot to be said for using this time to learn from the people around us and to reconnect with those people in the older generation who, I think sometimes we're all guilty, aren't we, of we forget that they've been through experiences when they were our age, when they were younger than us, that we'll never understand, but we can learn from.
Absolutely. They may not have thought of it as a hardship at the time, but when we asked them about it, we would definitely find it a hardship.
Does anybody else have any people that they draw on to take inspiration from at a challenging time like this?
I think it's. I think there's a lot to say for the people that. I mean, even on the news, I know there's lots and lots of updates of, you know, this many people and these are the negatives. But now and then you get a glimpse of hope. I saw a story in the news the other day about a really nice postman who just ended up dropping food to this lady. You know, little acts of kindness, and being so sort of like closed off. You speak to your family members, etc., but there's a lot of people that you don't know who you can learn from as well. And I really think that yes, it's very easy to have that nice and strong and positive relationship with our families and our friends, and be that person that, oh, I want to call this person today and just have a friendly chat. But you know, sometimes you have a deeper connection with somebody who you're just watching on the TV because it just means it's a light bulb moment. They can do it, then why can't I? I know I'm not a postman, but there's an old lady living down the road. Let me just go and take a bit of bread, or, you know, whatever. So yeah, I think in the home and out of the home, definitely. And And situations like this, not to sound sort of like so dramatic, but it depends on your take on it. You know, some people can be made by it, some people can be broken by it, but it's about having that inspiration both, and the strength, I guess, both inside and out, to sort of like get yourself through, I guess.
Yeah, it's also like really interesting. The other day, which is a little, just one of those memes on, you know, that you see on social media, that said, don't forget to check on your strongest friend, you know, that person that's always looking after everybody else. And I think that's sometimes the thing, isn't it, is that you can look to these people for inspiration or be like, yeah, they're always people who've got it sorted. And then at a time like this, you don't know what it is that might be a struggle for them. Like you say, whether it's your friend or whether it's the person across the road, just checking in on those people. Sorry, I think you were going to say something before I jumped in.
Oh no, thank you. No, I was just thinking about, you know, you mentioned about one of my keen interests is from the, you know, the Vedic philosophy, and you know, there within the Vedas there are so many stories and so many examples of people, individuals who go through such intense struggle. Like, it's filled with stories, it's filled with, you know, historical events like this. And what I find is so interesting is that is how applicable it is to our lives, you know. And you know, for me, I gain strength from those stories, you know, because there's, you know, there's a Sanskrit saying which is padam padam vipadam, which is there is danger at every step. And so we don't know what's going to be around the corner. You know, who would have thought this in January, right? Everyone was excited for 2020, and you know, then, you know, bam, like this happens. Like, who was expecting this? And so, you know, the Vedic philosophy is full of all these examples of, you know, in amazing personalities, you know, great people, but they've gone through so much suffering. Like, for example, the Pandavas in the Mahabharata, you know, that's one example where, you know, they were righteous human beings, you know. I mean, I'm not going to go into the whole story because it's an, you know, epic story.
We could be here a while if you did that.
But you know, essentially, they were rightful heirs to the throne. However, due to, you know, evil, so to speak, they were enforced into isolation, into the forest for 14 years. And you know what, you know, why? You know, they were good people, they were, you know, good individuals. But what we can gain from that story is something that Tejal was sort of, you know, getting to, which was this intense period of time where they grew and they strengthened, right? So the Pandavas, through their exile and their isolation, they were in constant contact with wise sages, right, who would give them all this wisdom about the spiritual and material realms, and what reality is, and who they really are, and, you know, the soul beyond the body, and you know, and then they also grew in their skill set as well, you know. So I like this example that Tejal was talking about Ravi Shankar. You know, 6.5 years he went to a guru and he learned this this skill, like really systematically, really absorbed. And you know, then you know, you create something amazing, you offer something so fantastic to the world. And so, you know, we can, and this is what I tell my clients as well, like, how can you change your perspective on what you're going through and use it to your advantage? You know, how can you use it to your advantage? How can you gain internally, you know, and go deeper, you know, grow? And I know it's really typical to say, isn't it? It's like, yeah, okay, grow. But you know, the thing is that when we are in situations that are so out of our control, then what choice do we have, you know, apart from, you know, running or sort of swimming with the current, you know, and just accepting, okay, gosh, like, I can't control this. Okay, so either, you know, like Reena, you were saying, either it makes you or breaks you, and so either you allow it to make you depressed, or you go with it and you accept, okay, what can I gain from it? What can I take from it?
I think some time back when I did a Vipassana course, it was a 10-day silent. You know, you couldn't speak to someone, you couldn't look at anyone. When somebody passed you, you sort of had to look down. And as you were saying, Chaitanya, about trying to get through things, the one thing, I mean, I think for 4 days it was just, I didn't know what I was doing. I thought, what am I doing here? You know, and I guess that was, I opted to do that. And obviously we've got no choice here, and none of us have. We're trying to do it to almost help everyone, or slow this whole system down. But reminding ourselves that the law of anicca, which is, you know, nothing is permanent, everything is impermanent. This moment now, you're never going to get that again. You know, the way I'm sitting, or the way we're breathing, or anything like that, it will never come again. We're in another moment now, and now, and now. So it's kind of one of those things that we have to remember, that you know, this is not permanent. It will change in some way. We don't know what way yet, but things will always change, and the world is forever changing. So I guess trying to sort of think about, you know, the sun will rise at the end of every sunset kind of thing, without sounding too cheesy. But yeah, I think that definitely helps. Just trying to think about, like, yeah, you know, tomorrow's a fresh day, I can start again, kind of thing.
Yeah, I totally. What I think of is there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, which is Krishna says, you know, the happiness and distress change like the seasons. You know, so when summer is over, winter comes. When winter, you know, ends, it's spring, and so autumn, winter, spring. So, but in essence, there's everything is in cycles. Like one thing goes, the you know, something else develops. So it's really, yeah, it's so important to remember that this will come to an end. And
we never know, like something, I don't know, I know it seems so far-fetched now, but something positive at the end, you know, like Tejal, you were saying about learning the sitar and giving something so great to the world. Like if once this is all over, if we can all say that, right, I've done this thing which I really wanted to do that I never could because I couldn't have the time. It's about bringing that positive into something like, I mean, yeah, we all know the restaurants and everything, they're just going to be jam-packed when everything opens up. But even something like when you, Chaitanya, when you mentioned the story about the bandhavs, it got me thinking about Sita, and how we're in isolation right now in our houses, you know, very luckily, food in the fridge, etc. And human interaction and people to speak to, but not everybody has that. And if you think about Sita and not necessarily the vanvas that she went on with Ram and Lakshman, but the one that she had to go on her own at the end, you know, while she was expecting and things like that, it was almost just like in that time, the world was able to understand the importance of a woman. Yes, it took some time, but at the end, there was a different view. Her children were able to learn things that they wouldn't have if they weren't with the rishis in the forest and things like that. You know, it's almost like, you know, not that we want it to do, but it had to happen for something to be changed. And you know, we don't know, don't see that far down.
I think really the word change is it's so applicable here, and I think not just as individuals, but as the world, like the earth itself. I just feel like a friend of mine, she actually put it in she put it in a really good way. She just said it's like the earth is our parent and it's sending us all to our rooms and telling us to think about our actions. And it was funny at the time, but actually it just makes so much sense. Not too long ago, I was traveling, and thankfully it was before all of this was happening. I was in Delhi and actually learning the sitar with my teacher, and at the time the pollution levels were 470, in which unit I do not know, but I will find out. But 3 weeks ago it had gone down to 70, and then I was reading an article in the Guardian, and there's a region in Punjab for which 30 years they couldn't see the Himalaya, the the mountains, the Himalayas, but now they can. And I think things like that are just so beautiful. There's, yes, we have to we're bearing the sacrifice, but actually there's so much good coming out of it, and we'll see it's there for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked about the choices we make and how we live during this time. And it's a very easy decision for me to decide to self-isolate, because the consequences for me and my family are quite dire. But I can fully appreciate that for a lot of the people in this world, it's a really difficult decision to make. Do I step out? Do I go out? Would it be, it will be all right. I may not get that ill, so I will just go out and do that last little errand. But, we've all got choices that we could make, and we could think that, well, actually, what would my decision do to society? What kind of impact would it have on the wider picture? So what will I do with my time instead? And, there's a lot of, we've got time in a way now to think about what else we could do instead of going out. We can't go out for a meal anymore at the moment. Can we have a meal at home in some way and make it special? But I do appreciate that there's some really difficult decisions to be made by people on just as simple as how much do we go out during this lockdown. People obviously, some are working outside of the home, some are helping others as well. But it'd be nice, it'd be good to look back on this time and think, I'm pleased with the choices that I made as well.
I think that's a really nice place, I think, to maybe bring this conversation to a close, is the idea that as much as this period of isolation is bringing so much restriction into what we considered normal, I think is presenting us with a whole wealth of new choices and new possibilities as a result of how we go about making those choices and choosing what to do. Thank you all so much for such an inspirational conversation. I have so much to think about after listening to everything that you had to say, and hopefully we can do this again sometime soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.